Hey everybody, it's Kathy with Backyard Columbus, and today's episode is about dragonflies and ponds. So a few years ago, quite a few years ago actually, we put in a backyard pond, and it was a Rubbermaid cattle trough. So nothing super fancy, nothing very large. We live in the suburbs, and we put it in the corner of our yard. I have no idea how many gallons that thing holds, but it is deep enough for your cat to drown in it. I wouldn't want a little kid wandering over to it. So let's call it 3 feet deep and 4 feet around, maybe 3 feet around. But it is a lovely little pond in our backyard. We have rocks all around it, and we have a water feature, so it makes all that nice pond noise. What is it? Like a fountain. That's what I'm trying to say. And then we put in another one, and my husband built that from scratch. So instead of one of those forms that you find that typically crack, and I would warn you against that. So I've known several people, they buy one of those plastic, cheaper plastic forms. And in Ohio, with our ice and then warm, warm, cold, freezing is what I mean. Warm, freezing. They tend to crack and then they leak and then it's a mess. So we did get a cheap plastic one we found on the side of the road, actually, put that in and used it as the form, but then went to a local, like a mulching place, and bought thick rubber and laid it with that. So that stuff's never going to tear or crack or anything like that. So anyway, we made that a beautiful little additional pond with a fountain in it and all of that jazz. And I'm telling you all that because, I wanted frogs or toads. Toads mate in the water. Frogs live in the water. But I wanted something in there. And so I always kept an eye on it. We had tadpoles and things like that. And so that those tadpoles, once they become frogs or toads, and they need a way to crawl out of that pond. And I do have a point here. Hang with me for a second. They need a way to crawl out of there. So I would put a branch, a small branch from the water out to the outer edge, or a board or something like that. Well, in the first Rubbermaid pond, and by the way, I would strongly to encourage you to get into building a backyard pond. They are a great thing to have in your backyard. They're just wonderful. Anyway, put a branch over one of these ponds, and I saw a dragonfly wandering, flying through the yard. And all of a sudden, the short of it is, a swamp darner, which is North America's largest dragonfly, found our pond in the suburbs. So that's what they look for. So if you are a dragonfly freak and you would like to see them in your living space, this is what you need to do, is get a pond, because that's where they lay their eggs. This dragonfly, this swamp darner, found our pond in our suburban backyard and laid eggs for basically 20 minutes. So I have a beautiful picture of two, if you could believe this, two female swamp darner dragonflies. And I'll put a link on my website so you can see the picture of these things. They're just stunning. So they at the very end of that stick body that they have, the females have what's called an ovipositor. So if you can imagine, if you're seeing this on YouTube, I'm taking my hand and scooping out the wood and depositing with their ovipositor the egg onto the log. So that's really cool. And I got about, 85,000 pictures of it and watched them for quite a while. And then after a certain period of time, honestly, I think it's about 3 weeks, but I'm not a dragonfly expert. About 3 weeks, those eggs will fall into the pond and then into the water, and then they become like a nymph. So I call them water crickets because that's what they look like. So they can stay in the water for up to 2 years, apparently. So let's call it a little over a year. And then they come out. So if you have a water plant, you have a pond, get some water plants, and they have roots on them, and they use those roots to latch onto, climb up out of the water, get to the top of the plant, and then it becomes, if you can imagine, kind of like a cicada. So they have an outer shell, they bust out of it, and then they hang out, dry off, and then they go about their dragon life business. And it's dragonfly business, that's what I meant to say. Anyway, it's really been cool. So this is what I do with my time. I come home from work, I go around, see what's blooming, see what's happening, look for butterfly eggs, look for caterpillars in the summertime. And then when it gets dark, I go out to our ponds with a flashlight and try to find dragonfly nymphs. And believe it or not, we currently have about 12 dragonfly nymphs in our ponds, and those are certainly leftovers from last year. So, I mean, how cool is that? And for a fact, there are 2 different species in there. I couldn't tell you what the species are, but you can tell the difference between the nymphs. So this is just a really cool thing. I mean, look, again, if you're a dragonfly freak, then you need to get a pond in your yard. I will tell you that we have 3 ponds. The one next to our front porch is 2 by 2. I mean, it's like 2 feet around and 2 feet deep. So it's not something that you could overwinter fish in, but you could certainly listen. It also has a fountain in it, sit on the front porch, and it's just so relaxing. So that's number 1 for your mental health. Sitting there, have a favorite beverage, and just chill the heck out on your front porch listening to your water feature is great. But I don't have any dragonfly nymphs in that pond yet, but I'm sure we will, because they just find them. I mean, overwhelmingly, a lot of my episodes, I want to get across to everyone that nature finds you if you give it a space. So this is one of those things. We gave it dragonflies a space, not even knowing that dragonflies would find our space. And now I've got dragonflies all over the place. So one day I was in the yard and I was doing some yoga, and all of a sudden a swamp darner, again, these swamp darner dragonflies, like I said, largest dragonfly in North America, I'm pretty sure, was flying in a grid pattern across the backyard, I will assume, snapping up mosquitoes. And it didn't even care that I was sitting in the middle of the yard. It flew in front of me, flew behind me, and you could hear it, like either its wings or snapping up the mosquitoes or something. But I honestly thought it was going to fly into my head. But it was just really neat. I mean, we were just enjoying the backyard together. So it's just been really cool. So having a pond, whether you want to stock it with fish, if you want to stock it with bigger fish or a bullfrog, just say you found a bullfrog, it will eat the dragonfly nymphs. So I don't know that I would necessarily encourage you to go mixing a whole bunch of stuff and hope that you're going to get dragonfly nymphs out of there. So it's just having these things in your yard is just another nice way to end your day. It's a really neat activity for your kids. If you have kids, whether you homeschool or just want to teach them about nature, it's just a really great addition to your yard and your own education. So I think that's really all I wanted to say about dragonflies. I'm just going to encourage you one more time. Consider a very basic pond project for your backyard, and hopefully the dragonflies will find you wherever you live and you can enjoy them as much as I have. So thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, drop me a line and have a great day.